Hello everyone, welcome to History and Culture. In 1988, Chiang Ching-kuo passed away. And Chiang Xiaoyang publicly disclosed his father's bank balance. The amount left everyone speechless. In the early spring of 1988, a unique sense of heaviness filled the air in Taipei. The passing of Chiang Ching-kuo not only plunged Taiwan into a brief period of uncertainty but also sparked widespread speculation about the wealth he had left behind. As rumors swirled, Chiang Ching-kuo's third son, Chiang Xiaoyang, stepped forward. At a somewhat subdued press conference, he revealed a number that caught everyone off guard: 1 million new Taiwan dollars. At the time, this amount was equivalent to less than $40,000. The room fell into silence. Journalists exchanged glances, seemingly unable to believe their ears. This figure stood in stark contrast to the long-circulated legends of the Kuomintang gold reserves. Why did Chiang Ching-kuo, who ruled Taiwan for decades, leave behind such a meager sum? Where had the vast amounts of gold, foreign exchange, and valuable cultural relics that were brought from the mainland to Taiwan gone? Even more intriguingly, why did Chiang Ching-kuo choose his third son, rather than other family members, to disclose this shocking revelation to Taiwanese society? These questions remain thought-provoking to this day. Chiang Ching-kuo, from crown prince to construction worker. One early morning in 1970, an unfamiliar figure arrived at a construction site on the outskirts of Taipei. Dressed in ordinary work clothes and wearing a straw hat, he sat quietly among the workers, eating a simple breakfast with them. As the workers curiously wondered who this newcomer was, a security officer accompanying him whispered a reminder: this was none other than Chiang Ching-kuo himself. Old Li, a laborer at the site, later recalled. He sat right next to us, drinking porridge just like everyone else. When he noticed a worker who had forgotten to bring breakfast, he even offered to share his own steamed bun. If the security guard hadn't told us, who would have thought he was the man in power? Scenes like this were not isolated incidents. During an inspection in Ilan, Chiang Ching-kuo encountered a heavy rainstorm and chose to stay in a worker's shed for the night. An elderly foreman recalled. That night, he slept on a shared wooden bed, using the same blankets as us workers. The next morning, his clothes were covered in construction dust. All of this stood in stark contrast to the luxurious lifestyle of his father, Chiang Kai-shek, during his time in Nanjing. In Taiwan, Chiang Ching-kuo presented an entirely different leadership style. In 1972, during a government meeting, he stated, "Officials must truly understand the hardships of the people. To do that, they must eat, live, and work alongside them." Historical records indicate that in 1925, Chiang Ching-kuo went to the Soviet Union to study at Sun Yat-sen University in Moscow. During his time there, he witnessed firsthand how Soviet officials integrated with workers and farmers. In a letter to his father, he once wrote, "To govern a land well, one must first understand the suffering of its people." After returning to China in 1937, Chiang Ching-kuo was assigned as a commissioner in Jiangxi, where he began putting into practice what he had learned in the Soviet Union. According to local historical records, the commissioner visited villages without security guards or an entourage, often walking on foot to understand farmers' difficulties firsthand. After relocating to Taiwan, he carried this approach even further. In 1973, a typhoon devastated Taitung County. Chiang Ching-kuo rushed to the disaster area immediately, trudging through the mud to inspect the damage. An elderly farmer recalled. That day, his leather shoes were completely caked in mud, but he kept walking through the fields, talking with us, asking about the severity of the damage and how the government could help more effectively. Chiang Ching-kuo's practical approach was not only reflected in his personal style but also in his governance philosophy. In 1975, Taiwan launched the 10 major construction projects. A large-scale investment in public infrastructure to improve people's livelihoods. According to financial data from 1976, the government allocated over 20 billion NTD to transportation, electricity, water conservation, and other public works. In 1979, during an internal meeting, someone proposed building a more luxurious official residence in Taipei. Chiang Ching-kuo immediately rejected the idea, saying, "Spending money on the people is more important than anything else." His secretary recalled, every morning, the first thing he did was read public opinion reports, paying particular attention to price fluctuations and citizen complaints. Whenever there was an issue, he would personally look into it. In 1985, an American journalist interviewed Chiang Ching-kuo and asked, "Your official residence doesn't seem luxurious. Why not make it more grand?" Chiang Ching-kuo responded calmly, "The official residence belongs to the public, not to me. Spending money on the people is the right path." Under his influence, the political atmosphere in Taiwan quietly changed. A senior official recalled, in the past, hosting banquets and giving gifts were common practices. But later, everyone restrained themselves, because we all knew that Mr. Chiang despised such things. Chiang Ching-kuo's pragmatic style allowed Taiwanese society to see a different kind of prince, no longer just a simple heir to power, but a leader truly willing to engage with the people and drive Taiwan's development. A noteworthy shift in Taiwan's economic transformation. One afternoon in 1973, in an office building on Zhongshan South Road in Taipei, Chiang Ching-kuo was listening to an economic department briefing. After an official presented Taiwan's foreign exchange reserve figures, he picked up the report, pointed to a number, and said, "Keeping this money in the bank is not as good as using it to develop the economy." A week later, Taiwan officially launched the 10 major construction projects. Meeting records show that the first investment amounted to 15 billion new Taiwan dollars, primarily used to build railways, ports, and power plants. Lao Zhang, who worked at Keelung Port for 40 years, recalled, at that time, Keelung Port was under construction every day. In just 1 year, 3 new cargo terminals were built, and even the outdated equipment was replaced. These investments quickly yielded results. A 1974 Ministry of Economic Affairs report showed that after the expansion of Keelung Port alone, Taiwan's annual trade volume increased by over $1 billion. Beyond infrastructure, Chiang Ching-kuo also vigorously supported local businesses. In 1975, Taiwan launched the Small and Medium Enterprises Assistance Program. And in just 1976 alone, over 2,000 enterprises received low-interest loan support. Lao Wang from Taichung, who opened a small factory at the time, recalled, "Back then, it was especially easy for industrial businesses to get bank loans. The interest rate was only 6 or 7%, more than half of the usual rate." These policies spurred the rapid rise of Taiwan's small and medium enterprises, SMEs. By 1979, the number of SMEs had doubled, and their output value had tripled. Many well-known Taiwanese brands today laid their foundations during this period. However, the influx of funds also led to some issues. In 1977, an internal audit report pointed out that excessive investment in manufacturing had caused the service industry to lag behind in development. In response, Chiang Ching-kuo immediately adjusted his approach and increased support for the service industry. An official from the Ministry of Economic Affairs recalled, he placed great emphasis on industrial balance. After reviewing the report, he promptly convened a meeting to discuss countermeasures. Starting in 1978, special funds were allocated annually to support the service industry. At the same time, Taiwan actively expanded into international markets. In 1979, the government established the Foreign Trade Development Fund, dedicated to helping businesses venture abroad. In 1980 alone, the fund subsidized over 500 companies to participate in international trade exhibitions. A Taiwanese businessman who attended an exhibition in the United States recalled, at that time, the government subsidized airfare and accommodation. Without this support, small businesses like ours wouldn't have dared to consider foreign trade. By the 1980s, these investments began to yield greater economic benefits. Taiwan's foreign exchange reserves grew from $1.5 billion in 1973 to over $10 billion in 1982. However, government expenditures were also rising. According to the 1983 fiscal report, just the annual interest payments on loans for the 10 major construction projects amounted to nearly 5 billion new Taiwan dollars. Historians have commented that during Chiang Ching-kuo's administration, he actively promoted local talent, appointing a large number of native Taiwanese officials and implementing localization policies to ensure that local leaders better understood the needs of the people. In his later years in office, he gradually pushed for democratic reforms, including lifting martial law, legalizing opposition parties and independent media, and promoting legislative reforms. Officially initiating Taiwan's democratization process. Chiang Ching-kuo was deeply concerned about the lives of ordinary citizens. Reports indicate that he visited rural areas more than 200 times each year to personally understand local needs. At the same time, he vigorously promoted rural development. Improving water and electricity supplies, expanding basic healthcare systems, and striving to reduce the urban-rural gap, which significantly transformed Taiwan's countryside. Due to his close connection with the people, he was deeply loved by the Taiwanese public. When news of his passing spread in Taiwan, many citizens wept in grief. Even years later, in successive polls of Taiwan's leaders, Chiang Ching-kuo remains the most highly regarded among the Taiwanese people. This is the History and Culture channel. Liking and subscribing are the greatest help and support to us. Thank you everyone and see you in the next time.